Happy New Comic Book Day, Geeks, and welcome to issue 44 of the Script Heroes podcast.
The show where we bring you comic news, book reviews, and industry blues. My name is Joseph Jastanowski, and I am the writer of January Hero, Cunning Carly, and the Cryptoverse.
And I'm Katie Markham, scripter of the Rusty Robot Country Club and ghostwriter extraordinaire. Today we have some awesome polls to talk about. We've got DC's All-In Special. We've got Hyde Street #1, Night of the Slashers #1, and Winnie the Pooh Demon Hunter #4.
And if you enjoy our reviews of any of those books or anything else in today's episode, you can follow the pod on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, all at the handle Script Heroes Pod. Or you can find me personally on all the same socials at JJAZ1111.
And I'm on all socials at Katie Markham Pro.
And now, let's move on to the news. Okay, it's gonna be a wild news week. So hopefully we do not go too long. We're gonna start with something utterly wild in my
I'm
humble
so
opinion,
excited for what this could possibly be.
which is that it has just been announced from Image Comics that Rob Liefeld is returning to do more Youngblood.
So here's the thing. At first, I was like, lol. Because Rob Liefeld, that man, doesn't want to retire. He keeps being like, oh yeah, I'm not going to do Deadpool anymore. Oh yeah, I'm not going to do Interiors anymore. And yet here he is, back again.
Well, hey, he left Deadpool, now he's doing this, so maybe this is the vibe. He was like,
Maybe
when he
this
left
is the
Deadpool,
vibe.
he's like, I'm leaving because I don't think this was the vibe. It was like I have to go, my people need me. He was like, I'm needed elsewhere, So evidently, perhaps
Evidently
this
he
was.
I think that we talked about this when we were talking about him doing books for Whatnot. As a man with a colored history and a, kind of unfortunate memification around him, I think that he's in the right place when he's doing books for people who are already fans of him.
Yeah.
Because I think that it's very much setting himself up for success doing Youngblood. I think that's a really, really good idea for him. I just find it very shocking that Image is putting out more Youngblood.
I mean, I don't know if I'm shocked that Image, it's gonna sell. And, does Image care what? I'm more shocked that, after how long has it been that he hasn't owned Youngblood? Probably, a good 20 years. That he has now come to some sort of an agreement with, I believe it's Scott Rosenberg, who's, if you're not familiar with the name, he's the guy behind Malibu Comics back in the day. I believe he's the one who owns Youngblood at this point. So I'm shocked that they have gotten on the same page to figure out a way that they were both happy to release, more Rob Liefeld Youngblood.
No, that's super, super exciting for Rob. And I guess I said I was shocked that Image was going to put out another Youngblood book, but they have been leaning kind of into nostalgia with things like Local Man. I feel like
we
there
can
was
get a Local
another
Man crossover, perhaps. That could be a
that'd
thing.
be fucking rad,
right?
Yeah,
they do the Shadowhawk kind of crossover thing, or at least they had Shadowhawk crossover into Local Man. So more characters now that are actually around. It becomes more reasonable for Local Man to do stuff in the OG Image universe as more of these characters
OG Image characters are around.
Yeah.
No, that's super exciting. I hope that everyone who's a fan of Youngblood is hype. I have never read it and don't have big plans to, but super cool.
I want to throw out two quotes here that are in the article that I have from here because it's entertaining. So if we're gonna start with the last time Rob Liefeld really spoke about Youngblood, back in 2020, Rob Liefeld was quoted as saying, "I have nothing to do with Youngblood. It's dead to me." In 2020, and then we have a quote now from Rosenberg, who is the owner of the IP.
Yeah.
Rob and I are a fantastic team, and I'm as excited now for Youngblood's relaunch as I was in 1992 for its initial launch. I'm excited to bring them to audiences old and new with their original creator, Rob Liefeld.
I mean, I'm glad that it's okay. In general, it seems that Rob Liefeld is in the business of rebuilding bridges right now, and I think that's
He
absolutely
really
wonderful.
does. Honestly,
And
Rob Liefeld for the past little bit seems like
yeah,
he's listen. Does he still get into Twitter arguments with completely random people? Yes. But genuinely, like, in his place in the industry right now, I feel like he's being much more collaborative and
friendly.
like yeah, like he's not coming across as the Rob
Yeah,
Liefeld of old here, you know.
and we love to see it. Yeah, so super super cool. Way to go, Rob. Congrats.
Yeah. Okay, that was step one of has hell frozen over week. Maybe
Okay.
that's not the best way to characterize this, but just like pigs flying out of windows, you know, week in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to guess if I'm trying to figure out if I want to make this into like a guessing thing here,
Oh, he knows I'm so bad at guessing
or
things. He does it just to humiliate me.
if I just want to drop this on you. Um,
Make your decision, boy.
I'm gonna make you guess, despite the fact that it's mean.
Okay,
Um,
I'm ready.
so Chip Zdarsky's been on Batman for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you saw the thing where like it was gonna be released every like 2 weeks, and then that
Yeah.
didn't end up happening or whatever. Anyway, we have now, I guess it's not announced because this is a scoop, as Bleeding Cool does sometimes, you know, when things have
Mm-hmm.
not been officially announced yet. But it seems as though the follow up creative team for when Chip Zdarsky's run ends is now set in stone,
Oh.
and I want you to guess.
Oh, jeez. Okay. Do I get any helpful questions?
No, I think you can go off of my lead in of my
Okay,
shock and
so
my
you
thing.
specifically brought up the every 2 weeks thing. So it's
That was more to
make.
characterize the dice. I don't want to take you off track. That was more to
Oh, okay.
characterize the
Because I
dice
was like,
team's run.
okay, so it's
So
either someone who puts out a ton of books every month already, or someone who we know works really slowly. So never mind. That was a misdirect.
yeah, that would really not help you. Don't go down that hole. That's not a good hole. Stay out of that hole.
Okay, so this is a very shocking thing to you. This creative
I
team
am stunned. Maybe other people aren't. I am stunned.
is is this because it's a traditionally Marvel creative team?
No, no,
Okay.
that's the wrong track. Don't go down that track.
Okay. Is it because you thought that this person would never come back to Batman?
Yeah, essentially.
Or never be
Essentially.
on Batman?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is that's more of the track. That's more of the
Which
track.
I feel like eliminates so many people because everyone's written Batman.
I want to go down the track. Well, I'll let you keep.
I mean, I'm primed from what we are reading this week, and
Yeah.
is it Jeff Johns? Is he like, yeah, I'll actually go back to DC?
No, but that's
Okay.
I mean, it's you're not like. I like the head space to some
I thought
extent.
that was
It's not
a
Jeff Johns. That would have been
fly
wild if like
situation.
6 months after leaving the company to like
Right?
start his own, the man just popped back for Batman.
That's why I was like, that would be a full pigs flying moment.
Yeah, no, that would have been a hell froze over moment. That's why I changed from hell froze over to like pigs fly, because it's like
Gotcha.
it's not quite a like, oh man, like something had to like change. It's just shocking that it's happening.
Well, I know
opinion.
that Tom Taylor's on Detective Comics, so I'm assuming it's not him, because I feel like you would see that as a very pigs fly because we both disliked his Titans so much. Is it John Layman? Is John Layman doing Titans and
No,
Batman?
that'd be so cool. No. I am going to bring up his Titans run in one of the books this week, just for a connection
I'm so
thing. Anyway,
excited.
but
Geez, this is such a hard guessing game. Just they're gonna write Batman. Yes.
And remember, you're looking for two names. You're looking for a full creative team here. You're looking for a full creative team here. You're looking for two names.
And you are sure that these are creators I would know?
If they're not, you need to leave the podcast. Like, it would be embarrassing.
There's so much pressure now. have we read any of their books on the pod before? He's thinking so
I believe
hard.
the answer is yes and no.
Ah, shit. So yes for one, no for another?
I believe so.
Okay. I think this is... Who like would be iconically shocking to see come on?
I will say my
Is it
shock
Marv
is
Wolfman?
but I want that's a good guess. You're on the right track now.
Thank you. Okay.
My shock one of these people alone would not have shocked me if one of these names was on it with somebody else. It's the fact that they are both on it together, and particularly one of the two names is incredibly shocking.
Who had like an iconic falling out with someone?
No, not that's
okay,
no, it's not because of
okay.
falling out. It's really just I'm very shocked about the one person and the fact that this is happening. So
is the artist Riley Rossmo?
No.
Damn. I thought that you'd be shocked because we've gone so back and forth on his art. Oh, this is a hard one. This is impossible.
I'm sorry. I don't think you're gonna get there.
I don't think so either.
Do you want me to give you one name? The name that doesn't shock me as much as the other name?
Sure.
Jeph Loeb is on.
Oh
the
shit.
Book. Yeah, that's the one that didn't shock me quite as much, but with the thing, and that's the one that we have read on the podcast.
Oh geez, so it's just an artist whose work I may or may not be familiar with?
No, you are familiar with this artist's
okay.
work. I promise you are familiar with this artist's work.
Oh,
we just have not happened to read anything, I believe, from the, I had to really rack my brain because I was like, surely we have, but we haven't, I don't think. So
trying to think of super iconic artists.
Yeah, that's a good track. That's a good track to be on.
Still alive, and
you're on a good track right now. You're on a good track. I'll give you like a couple more guesses and a little bit more waffling before I just slap it in here.
Can you give me another hint?
Let's stay on the train of the last news story. They're connected in an odd way.
Oh. Clearly it's Rob Liefeld. No. that would be a hell freeze over.
That would be shocking. I would have been fully
also, that would be a very weird creative team. Jeph Loeb and Rob
It's
Liefeld.
not a weird creative team. It's just like... It's not a weird creative team. I think I put you on the wrong track with some of these things. I don't want to explain why I'm...
Oh my god.
Because I can't... I'll give it away if I explain exactly why this is... so surprising to me.
The artist... You said in the same vein as our last news story. Are they one of the Image founders? Because that would be wild.
Ding, ding, ding.
I mean, I'm going to guess Jim Lee.
It's Jim Lee, baby!
It's Jim Lee, baby! Here's the thing. I am thrilled by this. Let my boy go back to interiors. He's been doing
just shocking that Jeph Loeb and Jim Lee back on Batman.
Amazing.
Jeez.
Like Hush 2.0.
Yeah, and then Jim Lee is doing interiors in 2025.
That's what's getting me. This man has been doing... He fully paid his fucking dues. This man deserves to, not work for the rest of his life with the amount of amazing art he put out into the world. But, I don't think that I can remember a book Jim Lee was on since... Was he Rebirth Justice League?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, that was Jeff Johns and Jim Lee, I believe. Let me give you the weirder part of this story. At least from... We're going now in a full... this is Bleeding Cool claiming this here.
Okay.
But we'll assume that this is, the explanation. But apparently, DC was at risk of losing Jim Lee recently.
Oh, shit.
Apparently, he was close to jumping ship to Marvel Comics to work on the X-Men relaunch. And basically, by giving him Batman is how they got Jim Lee to stay. So evidently, it's kind of the reverse of what you would expect. It's not Jim Lee paid his dues and he wanted to... It's Jim Lee apparently wanted back on interiors. And DC had to give him Batman to keep him from jumping to Marvel.
So... Okay. This is...
Wild, right?
Are you trying to tell me that Jim Lee was there, because he's like the editor-in-chief of DC, isn't he? Or what's his position?
He's the chief creative officer, publisher, and president of DC Comics.
Yeah, and they were not gonna let him on Interiors.
But
like,
apparently this comic is a major part of the reason. My guess would be that he went to whoever is technically his boss, and this is full speculation, this is not in the article, but this is just how this would, the only way this makes sense in my brain, because I think Jim Lee can technically just give himself whatever book he wants.
Yeah, that's
like, I do believe he has that power. My guess would be that he went to whoever is his boss, I don't know who that is, but whoever is his boss, and said, look, Marvel offered me the X-Men relaunch, I'm thinking about, taking a jumping ship, and they went, well, why don't you just give yourself a book here? Like, why don't you just give yourself Batman here? And maybe Jim Lee just didn't consider giving himself a big book until somebody told him. That's my best guess. Because you're right, he is not just the publisher, not just the chief. I guess he's not editor-in-chief. He's chief creative officer, publisher, so I'm guessing there's an editor-in-chief who actually gives out the assignments, actually looking at this. Because he's not editor-in-chief.
I feel like they would answer to Jim Lee rather than the other way around.
Yeah, but not in the... Like, I'm sure they answer to him. It's Mary Javins is oh, no. Yeah. Mary Javins is the editor-in-chief of DC. But they're the ones who would give out book assignments. So I guess it makes sense that that's not technically Jim Lee's purview. So
my theory would be that I think Bleeding Cool is grasping at straw. I don't think that they had to, be like, Jim, please don't leave. I'm assuming that Marvel offered him this, and he said no.
Yeah.
Because, it would have been really fun to have Jim Lee on, the resurgence of X-Men. It went so well the last time.
Iconic X-Men artist. Highest selling comic book of all time.
But, it would be such a wild thing. Because I imagine that in any sort of contract he has with DC, there's probably you can't work for Marvel clause. Like an exclusivity clause. And so I would assume that it was just I am not willing to give up my job as, creative chief, editor, or creative chief,
chief creative officer, which I believe probably has more to do with the non-comic side of it, and then in terms of comics, publisher and president of DC Comics.
I would assume that the chance to work on the X-Men reboot, as cool as that is, probably outweighed by.
Yeah, I've actually clicked because apparently there was a link in this to another article about him potentially jumping ship to Marvel for X-Men, which, by the way, quotes that the last interior work he has done was apparently wait, I'm very confused now. Oh, sorry. This is all secondhand from Rob Liefeld, so take everything with a grain of salt. But according to Rob Liefeld,
what a weird bit of synergy that
Rob Liefeld. So we're getting all of this secondhand through. So according to Rob Liefeld, Jim Lee had not done interior work since drawing 10 pages for Suicide Squad back in 2016. And Jim Lee approached Marvel, according to Rob Liefeld, to consider his options between Deadpool and Wolverine and the X-Men 97 cartoon revival, both being based on a lot of Jim Lee's work. He apparently came to them, and instead he re-upped. I guess this comes to the bit that I'll say is important here that we get from Rob Liefeld is it looks like his current deal as publisher and everything at DC was coming to an end around this time.
Oh,
so
gotcha.
This is before he ended up re-upping with DC, he talked to Marvel about potentially coming over and doing stuff with them. I would assume if he had jump shift, it wouldn't be just to work on X-Men. He probably also would have been editor of the X-Men or something like that. But anyway, super interesting that all of this happened with Jim Lee, and that what we get out of it is Jeph Loeb and Jim Lee on Batman!
Which is phenomenal. Hush is one of my favorite storylines. But I just can't get over it. Rob, what are you doing? Why do you know this? And why do you have that?
It's wild, especially as well, yeah, I don't know. I thought there was a period of time where Rob was real salty at Jim Lee. I think because I don't think Jim Lee ever disliked Rob Liefeld. They left together to go do the Marvel the Marvel relaunch.
And Jim Lee was
and
like
then
immediately embraced by everyone with like, oh my god, this X-Men is phenomenal. And Rob was given the whole, oh,
I don't
he left X-Men.
believe
Or he left Image.
Yeah, I don't believe was Jim Lee on X-Men when he came back? I don't think he was.
I thought he was.
No, because they were relaunching like the Avengers characters, if I remember correctly. I think
be
Liefeld
wrong.
was on Cab. I can't remember what Jim Lee was on, but I
Liefeld
don't
was
think
certainly on Cab.
X-Men. Yeah, but maybe it was
in
X-Men
any
again.
case, Jim Lee was not given the same like amount of flack.
Yeah, and then I mean, almost immediately ended up 2001, 2002 jump ship to DC and like started his ascension into like DC's superstar. So yeah, I think there was some salt there, but I don't think Jim Lee was ever salty.
I would be very salty with Jim Lee.
Yeah, I don't think Jim Lee ever had a problem with Rob Liefeld, though.
No.
I think he was one of the few Image guys who didn't, because he didn't have the whole "you abandoned us," you know, when we were all at Image vibe, because he had obviously left on much better terms than Rob Liefeld left, but he had also left. So, in any case, it's just that's such a funny connection between the stories here, and but man, we're getting Jeph Loeb and Jim Lee.
Dude, I'm so psyched.
Mainline Batman book. What world are we in where we're at the same time we have ongoing Scott Snyder and ongoing Jim Lee and Jeph Loeb Batman happening at the same time?
Right? Like, I'm not gonna lie. For the past, like, I don't know, 10 years, my Batman enthusiasm has, like, a little bit waned. Like, I wasn't reading the monthlies anymore. I wasn't really keeping up, because I feel like he got a little bloated, a little wild, and I was like, okay, it's too much. I've been picking up Chip Zdarsky's Batman, because Jorge Fedez's art is, like, chef's kiss. And to know that at the end of that tunnel, which was already like, oh, I kind of like this tunnel now, to have that switch over to Jeph Loeb and Jim Lee. What the fuck?
Yeah. And also, by the way, just to add some background to this, if you're like, Jim Lee's jumping onto a monthly book, apparently he's been working on the book since the spring, so he's front loading this so that he's not probably going to actually have to be drawing an issue a month, which tracks.
Though with people like Jim Lee, with people like Greg Capullo, I'm like, I believe that they blast through their art. Like, it's one of those things where there's such, like, confidence on the page where I'm like, oh, you, like, definitely, like, do it right on the first try, don't you?
I mean, I agree. My thing with Jim Lee is I just do not understand how a man with as many responsibilities for the company as he has would be able to do a monthly book. So the fact that he has been pacing himself to get things done ahead of time, like, that makes a lot of sense, because there's no way this man isn't just buried in shit every single week.
That's so
this is wild. To know that we get to go basically from last Halloween, and by the time that's over, actually probably before that's over, we're going to have Jeph Loeb and Jim Lee Batman and Absolute Batman, which is starting up this week, like tomorrow. We're going to the store tomorrow to get Absolute Batman. So, like, Batman fans rejoice. It is a good time.
We are eating good. This is amazing.
We are eating good in your neighborhood. But I have one last question for you, Katie, before we move out of the news. Was I correct? Have we actually not read a Jim Lee book on this podcast? Because that's wild to me. But I was like thinking back, and I can't think of one.
The thing is, I feel like Jim Lee has written a lot of very iconic, drawn a lot of very iconic, like, long things. Like, he'll be the artist on a very long run of things.
Yeah.
And I can see us being like, oh, well, you know, I don't want to just pick Hush out. Which is untrue. I always want to pick Hush out of everything. I love my boy. But, like, I don't think we've read a single Jim Lee
It's wild. Thing. It's wild. That's why, like, when you asked me, I really had to think. I'm like, I know we've read Jeph Loeb, but have we really not read Jim Lee? I was like, that's wild to me.
Yeah. I don't think we've literally ever done a credit for Jim Lee.
Yeah. Wild.
Insane.
Sorry, Mr.
Other than, you know,
I'm sure that'll change.
The technicality of every DC book we've read. Like, yes, the president is Jim Lee.
Yeah. No, I assume we'll at least give this run a shot because Jim
Oh,
Lee
yeah.
Jeph Loeb is extremely tempting
Yes.
to read.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Why? What a wild. Yeah, I don't think I oversold the news this week.
No.
This is wild shit.
This is bonkers in such a phenomenal way.
But, we're talking about big DC stuff. Why don't we move over to the poll list record? We're going to be talking about a really big DC shakeup.
Wow. All right, we have some awesome polls to talk about today. We've got DC's All-In Special, a sweet flip book going on there. We've got Winnie the Pooh Demon Hunter, number 4, the end of this miniseries, but not the end of the story. If you know, you know. Night of the Slashers, number 1, from Magma Comics, and Hyde Street, number 1, from our wonderful friends who created Brook Exodus. Jay, that's of course not all we picked up today. What'd you get this week?
We have more books.
We have more
books up in here. I have Godzilla Rivals, Mecha Godzilla versus King Ghidorah. This is Tom Waltz's little Godzilla one-shot. So despite the fact that I don't know much about Godzilla, we're going to be diving into that. Very excited. My plan is to read it basically once we're done recording. I have Little Popeye issue number 2. I did not read issue 1 yet, but I looked at the art and it looked real fun, so I decided I would still pick up issue 2. We have the end of Cult of the Lamb with issue 4. So that's fancy. And finally, we have TMNT Night Watcher issue 2, which is Juni Ba is writing this. So that's a little pod connection right there.
Is he also drawing it?
No. Farrah is drawing it, who has done a few. I believe he worked on some of the Armageddon game spin-off issues, if I'm not mistaken. And he also did TMNT Stranger Things.
There you go.
But yeah, the first issue was pretty cool. Definitely interested. They have changed the Night Watcher identity from the movie, which I think most people assumed was going to be the option to give Jennika her own series while they focused on the 4 guys as the main book, which I think is a cool option, and I'm excited to keep going with it. So yeah, those are my other books for the week. Right. Katie, what do you got?
Yeah, we've got the Batman and Scooby-Doo Mysteries, number 10, I think.
How many total issues have they done across that now? Because they've renumbered it multiple times now,
they
haven't they?
This one's on number 10, and I don't think they are always called Batman and Scooby-Doo Mysteries. I feel like the one before had a different name, but I don't remember what it was because I didn't read it.
They've done a boatload, what I'm getting from this. Okay.
We also grabbed our first entry into the all-in setup. We've got Chip Zdarsky and Jorge Jimenez's Batman, number 153. And, because I've never read them, and it's October, why not? I grabbed the first issue of Creature Commandos.
Really? Interesting.
Because why not,
Try
see if it's rad.
Try new things.
Maybe it will be.
Yes. Is that it? Or,
that is it.
You made it sound like that was the final issue.
That's all that I picked up. It's possible that I have more polls waiting at my other store, but I do not know.
So do you have preferences on the order of which we speak about the books that we read this week?
I think we start with DC All In.
Okay.
Then go to Hyde Street.
Okay.
Then go to Night of the Slashers.
Okay.
Then end off with Winnie. How do you feel about that order?
Okay. I think it's a very solid order.
All right. Let's do it.
DC All In. Following the events of Absolute Power, the heroes of the core DC universe have fought against the deep divisions in the world around them to usher in a new era of unity. And it's just in time too, because Darkseid has returned. Superman gathers every DC superhero on Earth to hold the line against a vastly different version of the Lord of Apocalypse as they raise our cosmic defenses and prepare for war. And when the first blows land, the shockwaves will ripple across DC's core series, shaking the nature of their realities to their very foundation. We have 2 writers on this book, Joshua Williamson of Green Arrow and Superman, and Scott Snyder of Batman and Nocterra. We have 3 artists on this book, Dan Mora of World's Finest and Shazam, Daniel Sampier of Wonder Woman and Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths, and Wes Craig of Deadly Class and Guardians of the Galaxy. We also have 2 colorists, Mike Spicer and Alejandro Sanchez, and the letterer, there's only one letterer, it's Steve Wands. So yeah, we've got quite a big chunky boy right here, you know?
Yeah, little flip book boy.
Little flippy boy.
Yeah. I thought the flip book worked super well. I really enjoyed the way that I read it, which was I read the absolute side first because Jay and I were going to talk about it for our bonus episode this past weekend because we thought it would have more of the absolute heroes in it, but it didn't, which is fine. But I like that I read that side first and then read the other side. I don't think that's how they intended it, just based off of naming this one Alpha and the other one Omega. But I thought that was really fun.
It's very approachable to do either way, but yeah, I think that's the opposite of what I assume most people did.
Yeah, so I really liked doing it that way, especially because of the ending of this first one, the way that they start bridging between the alternate realities are like literally burning holes through the multiverse to show you what's happening on the other side.
Evidently.
I feel like this isn't a book that has spoilers. Like, it's a setup book for the universe. It's not part of a series. But evidently spoilers. My bad. It's been a while since we've accidentally spoiled something.
It has. We've been doing so well.
We've been doing so well. The first story features my boy Boosty. I love Booster Gold. I think this is a really wonderful characterization of him. And I really liked, there's ongoing narration in it of Superman talking about Booster Gold. And I'm like, you know what? I love his take on Boosty. I think that's super nice. I think that it makes a lot of sense for Superman to, like, look at Booster Gold and be like, oh, hope for the future. I think that's super neat and wonderful. The other side, I thought Darkseid's writing was actually really strong. It's weird shit going on over there, and a lot of, like, multiverse mumbo-jumbo. Yeah. But I think that it ended up being delivered really, really well, really smoothly. And I think that there were a lot of rad visuals of Darkseid stuff and the stuff with the Spectre. When Darkseid cut off his own hand, that was a super great panel. Loved that. His entire interaction with his children I thought was super, super fun. I actually really enjoyed this. It's got me hype for the Absolute Universe, even though what it sets up is going to be my least favorite part of the Absolute Universe, which is going to be like the bridging between.
That's fair. I thought you were going to say the huge spoiler that I'm not going to give is there's something very interesting about the Absolute Universe moving forward, which
yes, we will give no spoilers.
Really has some draft implications too, because I think there might be a real nice pick, there.
Just Darkseid himself.
Yeah, that's evidently what I meant. No, but yeah, I thought this was really, really cool. I really enjoyed this. This felt like a really, like we talked, I think we reviewed an issue or two of Absolute Power. We reviewed a couple things about Absolute Power, but bigger when we were reading Beast World. Is like talking about things that like were really trying to feel important and weren't like fully getting a buy-in. They tried to make this set feel like the most important thing in the world. Like even down to the membership cards, they tried to make those feel like the most important thing in the world. And I think 9 times out of 10 in this book, they made me believe that it was incredibly important to DC, to the characters, to the universe. I think you absolutely nailed it. Booster Gold is characterized so nicely here. It's really, really cool. I read this very weirdly because, like you said, we had started to read the Absolute thing, but then you ended up shooting me the message like, we're just going to do something else because you had finished the Absolute side. Yeah. I had not yet finished the Absolute side. I was probably halfway to 2/3 of the way done with the Absolute side. And then when I came back to read it this time, I read it, the front side before going back and rereading the entire Absolute side, which was actually kind of really good because it meant that I didn't reach the collision on the one side, but I had like
Love
gotten
that.
through a lot of the background of like, so I knew why Darkseid was kind of in the way that
Mhm.
he was. By the way, really like the Darkseid. Like you mentioned the Darkseid characterization on the Omega. I really like Darkseid on the Alpha. Like kind of the vibe of that was really really cool. I
Yeah.
liked seeing him interact with like just the entire DC universe as they're all there.
So rad.
Um, yeah,
And
there's so much cool
also,
stuff here. But
Dan
yeah,
Mora, you absolute legend. This fucking splash is so cool. Like, don't look too closely if you don't want spoilers. But Dan
yeah.
Mora's art continues to just ugh, baffle me. I love the way that he designs characters so much. He's so talented. Amazing.
But yeah, let me hit on a little
Yeah.
thing that I'm questioning a little bit here.
Mm-hmm.
I get we're doing really big Justice League team. Almost everybody's on it. We're still getting a Titans book though, so why are the Titans on it?
I took it to mean that the Justice League book is going to be a rotating cast.
It is, but like it just still feels weird for me for the Titans, especially when we get like the Doom Patrol member being like, "I already have a team. I'm not going to be on you." We have like Starfire just like, "I'm in," and then Nightwing like obviously being there. I'm like, I don't know, man. Like you could have just let them stick in the Titans there, you know, or like fully move them up. Like, but I don't think that's the case. I don't think this is like a Nightwing and Starfire on the Justice
Mm-hmm.
League, and we're gonna have a new Titans team. Like I think they're just gonna be on both, which maybe won't bother a lot of people. I don't love it. Like I feel like you got your team. Be on your team. Like don't be on multiple teams at the same time. Feels
Jay
weird to me.
can't cheer
Very
for
small
two
little
teams
thing.
at the same time. We
No,
were
it's not.
just going
Oh,
over this off pod.
no,
Yeah.
no. But like, I don't know. I just feel like it's weird for them to be a member of multiple teams, especially if nearly the entirety of the Titans team is on the Justice League. Then like, why do you even like exist? You know?
I mean, because they're dealing with Titans level problems.
Which for the last year has just been weather.
Hey, we don't know that. We stopped reading because all it was weather.
Yeah, no, I thought this was super rad. I really, really like this.
Yeah.
I like what it's set up for both things. Like you said, the crossover between is probably my least excited stuff, but I still think they did a really good job with it in this.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Rad. Well, are we ready to talk about Hyde Street? Hyde Street, number 1. In every city and town, off every country road and Metropolis Avenue, if you make a wrong turn, you might find yourself on Hyde Street. But be careful who you talk to and what you do, because the consequences make death itself seem like the easy way out. Introducing Mr. X-Ray, Pranky, the world's most dangerous scout, Miss Goodbody, and many more, out to delight, fright, and say goodnight. What is their secret? And that of Hyde Street? Only they know. For now. The writer here is Jeph Johns of Green Lantern, Aquaman, Rook Exodus. The artist is Ivan Reis of Green Lantern, Aquaman, and Rook Exodus. The colorist is Brad Anderson, and the letter is Rob Liefeld. Jay, we weren't super hype on Hyde Street when we first read the Ghost Machine sampler.
I'm not gonna lie, I've pretty much forgotten that sampler story. I don't know if you
I have also completely forgotten the sampler story. I just remember that we weren't super hype on it.
Yes.
I don't even think it was a real story. I think it was just like Mr. X-Ray talking about Hyde Street to us. But with how much we loved Rook Exodus from the creative team, Jeph Johns and Ivan Reis, we were like, you know what? Let's give it a try.
And obviously, as a Green Lantern fan, I am a huge fan of this creative team, as I think
Yeah.
most Green Lantern fans are.
Here's the thing. I love Blackest Night. Super, super rad. We decided to give this guy a try. How do you think that try went?
This is fucking awesome. I love this. I think this is such a cool concept. I love the opening of this. We go into a like very like interesting like eerily normal setup that just gives us with a big little early twist to bring us into Hyde Street. It's like that's why I did not really remember what Hyde Street was, you know, like from the sampler. So I fully got taken for a ride with this. Like I was expecting things to happen, but it went a very different way than I expected. And then we just get a really nice origin in this. And like origins in issue 1s can be a tough thing to do, but I really liked it. Basically, I don't want to fully spoil it, but I'll just say like Mr. X-Ray's family situation comes into it at the end, and that actually really got me. I thought it was
Same.
really, really well done, really well handled. Ivan Reyes does such a good job making things like just eerily off in this book. Like everything's a little bit unsettling, and I'm like, I felt constantly on edge reading this book. I don't know if you felt similarly.
I think that that's definitely what it was going for.
Yeah, and like that's what, you know, I think really landed this for me. Like I was just on the edge of my seat waiting for the next thing to happen constantly, and the ending is phenomenal, and it has me real hype for more. So I was a huge fan of this. I really like this. Same as Rook Exodus, this creative team and Greenlight, this creative team cannot miss for me. I am a huge fan of when these two dudes come together.
Absolutely. Yeah, I thought that it was really a lot cooler than I was anticipating it to be. Like you said, really rad origin issue. I really like Mr. X-Ray. He's the type of character that I get very like, I like you. Cool man. Weirdo.
you cool little man.
You cool little man. I like that you're a mean salesman. I think that's neat.
I like how it also ties into like the old things that were like sold in like comic book ads that you could like mail
right?
away. Like it's a cool like connection to the meat. I like that a lot.
It really is. That being said, I'm a little worried that issue 2 is also going to be an origin, because at the very bottom the tag is, you know, tune in next week for the origin of Pranky, and I'm like, okay, I don't know that I'm gonna be as hype if it starts bloating its cast out. Like the blurb mentions Miss Goodbody and many more, and it's like, okay, I don't know that we met Miss Goodbody.
Is Miss Goodbody the like throwaway? I thought they have like a throwaway line about somebody in here.
They do about not the scorekeeper, the
doctor, right, or something like that.
Well, the
like
doctor gets a line. Yeah, so I'm a little worried that it's gonna bloat out because I really like X-Ray, and I think that if it's tight on X-Ray and Pranky, I'm gonna like it a lot. I think that if it gets too much into the world around it, I'm going to be a little bit turned off. But it's a very much a good start. I think that some of it's a little over the top for me personally, specifically with Pranky. Like the concept of, yes, this is a Boy Scout, but evil is less my favorite brand of villain. I
quite liked getting badges for his.
That was funny. I did like him.
I enjoyed that a lot. I enjoyed the badge just like popping up on his slash.
I like that. That's how the scorekeeper is keeping score for him. He's like, he gave me the point. I want to see how all of them like
because like I think I agree that like, oh, Boy Scout but evil could have been really bad. I quite enjoyed the way that he played and like his just like really excited about scoring and being like, you know, the only rules are, you know, finders keepers and losers weepers, and you lost. Like he's just such a like,
oh, you forgot the most important part of that line, because he's talking to X-Ray and he's like, finders keepers, losers weepers, Mr. Peepers. Incredibly dumb. I loved it. That line, phenomenal.
Yeah, I enjoyed the hell out of this.
Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I was going to, and I'm very excited about that.
Same. But we have another number one that I don't have a physical copy of because my store has them a week late. I'll get my physical copy tomorrow. But luckily, Magma Comics, being as awesome as they are, put up the new issues on Global Comics. So if you have a Global Comics account, you can read it. And that's how I read it. Quick little plug for Global Comics there.
There we go.
Yeah.
Let's go talk about Night of the Slashers.
Night of the Slashers number 1. Hill Creek is a lovely place to visit, except the one night of the year its citizens transform into bloodthirsty maniacs. Of course, that's the very night Laura's bus breaks down, stranding the disillusioned teen and her classmates in the secluded town. Secrets uncovered, terror at every turn. Will anyone survive the night? The writer is Kevin Scott of Star Wars and Titans, and the artist is Paul Fry of Star Wars and Blood Squad 7, with letterer Sean Lee. Kate, tell me what you felt about Night of the Slashers.
I liked it. I am not normally a big horror person, but I think what we have learned through me reading Hack Slash and really loving it is like slasher horror is possibly the type of horror where I'm like, oh, that doesn't scare me. I can engage with that. slasher horror inherently comes with a little bit of body horror, but not like invasive the body horror, invasive style body horror. Like that's a little too much for my weak constitution. But this is super fun. I really loved the opening sequence. The first 4 pages. 3 pages are really, I think, amazing hooking you in.
Is fantastic.
Yeah, and there's a really great big full splash shot on literally page 2, and it's super super duper well done. I am intrigued by the setup. I think that I'm going to call it a fight, I suppose, we get towards the end of the book. Really exciting stuff with what I'm assuming is important, stuff moving up to it. Getting to know our characters, our presumably future victims. And so as much as I liked the slasher parts better, the middle part feels like the calm before the storm in a movie where, this is going to be the only opportunity we have to have the world as it is. And then our characters are being thrown into a world they don't understand for the rest of the book. And I think that that's going to be a really exciting ride.
I agree with a lot of what you said there. The beginning and the ending are great. I like the setup. I think it's an awesome concept.
Yeah.
Where I landed with the middle, I think is a little less positively than you did, because it is a lot of stuff with these characters. I don't love the way that the characters are written. They feel like they're meant to be a parody of slasher characters because they're so overly generic of I slept with him, but I don't like him, and this guy came to my rescue, but I'm not with him, and then I have to go and work with the guy who is still a dick, and I'm gonna make these it felt very old school slash that you'd see when you're in a TV show and they're watching a fake slasher movie, or you're in a parody that's about to break it, and it's not actually what you'd expect, but that doesn't really come and it is what you'd actually expect. So it just, I don't know, the characters' personalities and their very standard slasher jock, alt girl, trailer roles didn't super land for me. I think I'm more excited for the moving forward stuff because I think where you actually get to play with the whole town being slashers is what makes this unique.
Yes.
But in this given issue, we really focus on just the one slasher and these characters, so it just felt it was intriguing, and I thought it was fairly well done, but it just felt very cookie cutter to me for this given issue.
That's super
so I didn't
fair.
think it was bad, but it just felt very standard for me in this issue, and I'm still intrigued, and I'm hoping the future issues will kind of break that, but that's where I landed on this issue.
No, super super fair. I think Magma Comics normally does 4 issues stuff, right?
I don't think they've ever done anything but 4.
Yeah.
At least up to this point. I meant in their issue series. Yes, they did the collected Death Comes with a Toymaker, and I believe in the back of this book you can see what I think is the announcement of Pedestrian getting a collected edition, because I don't believe I've seen that mentioned anywhere, but that looks like a collected Pedestrian. Is it Pedestrian or is it something else?
It looks like it's just, in mine at least, it's just advertising the Pedestrian number 3.
Oh, at mine, in the back of the Global Comics one, let me quickly scroll ahead. There's a graphic with a bunch of their books. Magma October titles, and it has it's the scale trade. I'm sorry, it's the scale trade.
That's my bad.
So sorry, which I think is the first time they've been collecting a series that they had already put out as individual issues. That's my bad. I landed on the wrong.
Super duper rad. But that being said, Death Comes to the Toymaker, October release. Get your Dakota Brown
right now.
Yeah,
get there. Did you order it yet? Come on.
All right. But speaking of number 4 in a series, seamless transition, we've got Winnie the Pooh Demon Hunter number 4. Winnie the Pooh Demon Hunter number 4. Talking Bear fights demonic forces, lovable companion and lethal combatant all in one. Do you smell that? The big bad wolves have attacked, and they're looking for a tasty snack. Can Winnie the Pooh and Red Riding Hood defeat them? I'm sorry, and the Red Riding Hoods defeat them? Or is this the end? And in a bonus backup story, Winnie the Pooh teams up with the Demon Slayer Turtles. Everything on this book, art, writing, coloring, lettering, the initial production, everything on it. Nicholas Mueller, friend of the pod.
Slight addendum, because we did screw that up a little bit.
Doesn't he have an
We
editor?
have
Is that
we
the
have
only
Nathan Mueller and Leo Mueller as co-writers on one of the
yes,
backup stories.
on one of the
Professional
backups.
published comic book writers,
Yes.
Nathan and Leo Mueller. Give them their credit.
You're right. Nick, of course, of Demon Hunter Raven and Winnie the Pooh Demon Hunter.
Yes.
Jaybird, it is the end of our first arc of Winnie.
Yes, it is.
How'd you feel?
Yeah. This is basically reaching where I've read to, because I've not picked up my volume 3 yet, or book 3. I don't remember what the terminology is. But I've not picked up the next volume yet to actually read it. I own it. And this got me real jazzed to pick it up. I think I'm gonna probably read it tomorrow now. Like, this got me real jazzed to just go like, oh yeah, this is where this ended. And I really love where this ends, by the way. It's a really, really solid cliffhanger. An establishment of a villain that I'm very excited about, because up to this point we've had more like like villain of the week type threats, I guess is how you put it. Like just very like demonic threats for that encounter, and then we kind of move on. This sets up a big villain that I'm real excited for.
What a design on that villain.
Right? Oh my god. Nick knows how to do designs, man. Like, a lot of the designs of the fairy tale characters in this world are super cool. I think that this has like because this is a little bit shorter than the other issues in terms of the bulk, because then we get like backup stories. It's mainly just an action sequence against the big bad werewolves, which I really love the concept of those. And it's a great action sequence.
We've mentioned that Nick has, because he's writing and drawing these, he's truly like gotten better every issue, because you see everything coming through. Look at this shit right here. This is amazing. The splash of the werewolves.
You want to put progress? Through? In my opinion, I don't know if you disagree, I think the Demon Hunter Turtle story is the best thing Nick has ever drawn. I think it's
so gorgeous.
I think it looks phenomenal. There's this nice snow throughout, this awesome like energy stuff. There's like a real cool final splash. Like, there's just I love the way this story looks so much.
Yes.
It is by far, in my opinion, the best thing Nick has done, which makes sense because it was a stretch goal on the the second volume, so it was the last thing out of this stuff. Obviously, the next volumes come out by now, and I'm sure it's even better. But it makes sense. Like you said, he really is progressing and growing as this happens. And there's also a fun little story in here that's co-written by his kids, which is really, really
so
cute
sweet.
and fun.
And also I'm incredibly funny.
Oh yeah, very, very entertaining. But yeah, especially this basically, I think we get, for the main story, we get a great action sequence and then just a phenomenal lead-in to what comes next, to hopefully be enough to, get Antarctic Press to greenlight that second series. Make sure you pick up these 4 issues so that we can get more Winnie the Pooh Demon Hunter through Antarctic Press. But yeah, that's what you get from the main story, and then you just get some really awesome backups. And like I said, I think the Demon Hunter Turtles is one of the best things to come out of Winnie the Pooh Demon Hunter. It's such a
but he's not biased at all.
Put together. I'm not biased at all.
As someone who's actually unbiased, I agree. No, yeah, it's so fun. The way that Nick does the action throughout this is such a good way of doing action. He does it in such nice bursts, and then you get like a moment of breather, and then you keep going. But it's never, I feel like it's never, with the fairy tales, it feels a little silly to say it's not too long and it's not too short in between these bursts of fights. It's just
a Goldilocks thing.
Exactly. It's fully Goldilocks. Yeah, there's some really awesome, just big panels in here that have some really wonderful action, which is incredibly fun to see. And the backup with his kids is so gosh darn cute. The concept of it being an owl flying Red Riding Hood herself around and explaining things about the Winnie the Pooh Demon Hunter universe. And it's simultaneously informative and very fun and incredibly funny. Like, the very first place they visit is, some people have found digging a hole and cowering for their lives. A great option. And the image on there is so cute. And then there's a cute little twist at the end as well. I loved that little story. That brought me so much joy.
I fully agree. It's just a lot of fun. It's a really fun issue, and like I think one of the things Nick is so phenomenal with, and I think it's one of those things that writer artists and good writer artists tend to be really phenomenal with is pacing. Like the Winnie the Pooh Demon Hunters just paced so nicely. It's such a breeze to get through, but in a great way where, you know, you can get through it really fast, but Nick knows how to give you those moments where you do pause at certain points to go like, oh man, oh that design, oh that splash, oh man, wait, did that just happen? Like what? Oh, that's gonna be interesting stuff. So yeah, it's phenomenally paced, and it's really really engaging because of that. I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. But that is going to take us to the end of our pull list Rex for the week. Are you ready to put your stamp on one of these books?
I am. I'm going to make you go first because I feel like you make me go first a lot.
I often make you go first. Yeah, so this one was a pretty easy one for me.
Oh, okay.
Mostly because I am really feeling the DC hype. I'm giving it the all-in special. It's got the benefit of being chunky. I think that all of the characters, you know, at least the super important ones were written super, super well. And with Joshua Williamson and Scott Snyder writing it, how could it go any other way, you know?
Yeah. No, that's fully fair. I'm tempted to agree with you, but I'm not going to. I'm going to instead give my pull list rec to Hyde Street, #1. I am very jazzed for this series. I think it's very unique and interesting and cool. And I really, really want to read more of it. So I think you should read more of it too, people out there. So pick up, according to KD, DC's All-In Special #1. And also pick up Hyde Street, #1. And pick up the other books we read this week too, because I think it was really, really fun and cool.
Yeah.
But these are official recs. So, you know, take that to the bank.
Our official recs? Now pull them.
Yep.
All right, but are we ready to move on to the Creator Corner?
Let's do it.
All right, here we are in the Creator Corner. Welcome in, Jay. How you feeling?
I'm feeling good. Katie.
Nice.
Why don't you tell me what we're going to talk about?
Yeah. I forgot to do my little intro. This is where we sit back, relax, talk about comics.
You're in too deep.
I'm in too deep. You all know the drill. It's episode 44. Today on the Creator Corner, we are going to talk about something very thematic for spooky season. We are going to talk about writing monsters. And there are a lot of factors that go into writing a monster. But up front, I want to say there's a lot of metaphorical monsters you can do. Like, oh, this person killed their dog. They're a monster. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about spooky beasties. Yeah. So I want to start, as you would when writing a monster.
As one would.
How do you even create a monster?
That's a really good question. I mean, I feel like it varies so much depending like why you're creating a monster book. What is the monster's role in this book? You know,
fair enough. There are many different roles a monster could have.
Yeah. Like I don't know that I've ever done like Universal's monsters, like a classical monster story that's like just about a monster. I feel like if I'm writing a monster, it's like usually like okay, either for some reason I'm creating a bunch of monsters for some sort of like thing, or the protagonist is a monster for some reason because that's fun, or I'm going like off of an existing monster archetype, like I'm going to do a werewolf thing or something like that, you know?
Yeah, I feel like that's where a lot of monster stuff starts, because with the Universal monsters, you get a lot of archetype. Like, even when we were reading The Gun Hand, like, it starts with the Frankenstein monster type. So even something as specific as Frankenstein, you can very much...
that wasn't an archetype, that just was...
Exactly, yeah, he just was Frankenstein. But, you know, in the sense that Frankenstein is kind of his own guy. It's like you're making your big green undead man, and there's your Frankenstein. So looking to other horror for inspiration is like a very like classic way to start a monster.
Yeah, I think horror is one of the like most like paying genres. Like I think horror is there's a lot of swiping in horror and a lot of building on existing things in horror. Yeah, it's a very interesting creating monsters is a very it's a very open ended question, which
It
is
is.
I don't want to, but the one thing I'll say is like this is when you're talking about something like a monster, you're probably gonna lean even more on your artist than
Mhm.
for other types of characters. Like there's a lot on the artist in creating a unique monster design. I mean, I can tell you how, if we're considering Julius the Werehound a monster, which I
Yeah.
assume we'll go there. I think me and Elton went through 12 designs before we landed on the correct one. That man is a saint, and I would never suggest doing that many, but it took us a long, and I want to specify that I think he's first drafted every other character design for the series. So, you know, but monster's real tough because it's much harder to explain compared to or like to even visualize compared to just like okay, it's like a large man with a large man with brown hair or a small girl with red hair or whatever. Like those things are much easier and classical. You can go like okay, they have this color hair, this color skin, this height, this build, and while you might want to tweak, you're probably going to land on what a human character would look like for the most part, and you're not going to be that
Mhm.
far. A monster, there is so much there is so much specificity there and so much that can come with different things. So what I'll say is firstly as a writer, try to have something fairly solid because you might think that you do, but when it comes to a monster, there's a lot more needs to be there for it to be solid compared
Mhm.
to I think a normal character.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good place to start with monsters. I'm thinking back to when, uh, in one of our very first Strange Saturday Super shows, we read Paul Tobin's My Date with Monsters, and there's a lot of just like weird fuckers in there, like a lot of human
They're
body
so fun.
parts doing weird, non-standard things.
Yep.
Like an eyeball coming out of an asshole. Never forget. Uh,
Yep. We'll never forget. Burned into my
can never
brain.
forget.
It's so
But that's
fun.
one of those things where you can create very memorable monsters even from very original things. So
Yeah.
when you are going about putting a monster into a story, and to start, we'll go with the classic like monster is villain. For
Yeah.
looking at this, what do you think is the like specific role of a monster as opposed to like
Oh,
a human bad guy?
that's such a good question. I think
Yeah.
typically I might get eaten alive for this, not gonna lie.
Ooh, by what
Because it
kind of
might be
monster?
the human. It's metaphorical though.
No, we're not talking
No,
about.
I know. I think often monsters are kind of your way to have an antagonistic force that doesn't need as much motivation. Like they might still
Mhm.
have some sort of motive, but like it's a lot more just like they're evil or they're feral or they're whatever. Um, except for maybe like vampires. Like vampires, I think are like a monster that tend to still have like I don't know. They can have like plans and shit. They're
I
very
mean, I feel
advanced
like their
monsters.
motivation is most of the time just like, how do I drink even
Get
more
blood.
blood?
Yeah, but I feel like sometimes they have like weirdly advanced plans for that. Like vampires
That's
can
fair.
get like their
That's
villain
fair.
monologue, whereas like a lot of other villains are not going to get a like a monster's not going to get a villain monologue. They're
Mhm.
going to be like, here's a force. Either there's a human trying to control them or trying to unleash them, or for whatever reason, and it lets you have something more feral and less understandable.
Mhm.
Which, especially if you're leaning into the more fantastical or horrific genres, um, having a villain who's less understandable can be a very nice way to
Oh
hedge, which
yeah.
I think is where monsters really come in. But I'd like to hear your opinion on that because maybe you have a little bit more fleshed out one than I do
Oh,
because I don't
I
know that
don't.
I have.
Peek behind the
Okay.
curtain. I pick these topics right before we start recording and mull over questions for the rest of the episode.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah,
Not enough time to mull over answers. I think
yeah,
monsters are often very like in classical literature, monsters have such a base in like allegory and stuff like
yeah.
that. And I think that we as a society have kind of moved away from that. Uh, like, typically your vampire isn't going to be a metaphor for, sex because
Yeah,
you'll just put sex in your book because it's not,
yeah.
1888. Uh,
It's not. Oh no!
Oh my gosh! Oh, I forgot. The doctor said that I wasn't supposed to tell him what year it was. Rather, what year it wasn't. But
Technically, didn't break the rule. You told me what year it was, and not what year it
there you
was.
go.
So, yeah,
there you go.
You get it. Yeah.
But so yeah, I think that we've very much moved away from the monster as allegory.
Yeah.
I think that it still can be used as a shorthand because of that history. Like looking at a werewolf, the kind of go-to shorthanding, you're obviously welcome to subvert this in your stories, is like, that's, someone who has lost control of themselves.
Yeah.
Like, that's very easy. Like, okay, we've got a shorthand for what the problem with this person is. Or with vampires, I think a lot of times it's like gluttony and decadence. And like, yes, that is someone who doesn't have a soul. And so you can get a lot of shorthand in there that I think is nice, like you're saying, especially in, I don't want to say non-complicated, because that's not really what we're talking about here, but in like very evil bad guy stories. So many stories aren't evil bad guy stories anymore. And so using monsters is a good way to be like, yes, this is, looking at Winnie the Pooh Demon Hunter, which we read this week, looking at it and be like, okay, yes, this is a horde of werewolves. It is okay for us to kill them. Which I suppose is another thing. When you have zombies, when you have werewolves, when you have vampires, it's not a moral quandary for your character to be killing them.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Weirdly, I think zombies have managed to keep a lot of the allegory compared to a lot of the other monsters. Like, I think zombies, for whatever reason, get to keep.
Well, I think the zombies are, I mean, obviously not in, like, deep culture, but in modern culture, I think the zombie movie is really, like, the boom of zombies. And so they have a much more recent allegory put upon them.
No, that's right. It's just like we went through the werewolf and vampire, craze, and I don't know that werewolves kept like a huge significance other than hot guy who can turn into wolf, like so the fact that zombies, I think it's maybe just because you can't really make zombies hot, so like they had to stay.
Someone hasn't seen warm bodies.
But how do you I guess let's say that you're sitting there and you're like, okay, I want this fully evil. I'm gonna go creature. I'm not gonna go horde of creatures, because I think horde of creature becomes very easy to just grab your werewolves or whatever your archetype is, your zombie, and just throw them as a horde. You go one monster in whatever the story is, because you want that one monster who can be unleashed and can just be killed or treated as a fully evil entity without like having to try to understand it or whatever. You're at that place in the story. How do you land on what the monster should be, whether it's like what archetype you start at or just how you build up this monster from the ground? Like, how do you pick the right monster, I guess, to shorten make the question easier? How do you pick the right monster for your story?
I think a lot of that is going to be looking at who the main character of your story is. Like, your protagonist, you either want, there's kind of two routes to go. You either want your monster to, exist in a space where your hero cannot kill them, where it's like, oh, I'm a super tough lad, but this is a horde of zombies. I can only punch my way out of so many of them. I know we weren't doing hordes, but Or you can go with the like reflection of themselves, where it's like, I'm a super mean guy and I mistreat the people around me and have a drinking problems. There's a werewolf? Oh no! That's like me. And so then by killing the monster, you get that like kind of character arc finalizing of like, oh, I'm killing that side of me, and now I can be a good person again. So I think those are the two kind of good routes to go. With a hidden third route, which is, I think, another really great thing you can do with monsters, which is just they're fucking cool. Like, at the end of the day, there is nothing wrong. They're fucking cool. There's nothing wrong with making the like super evil monster villain of your story just be a dope fucking guy. Just like, oh man, he's got 17 arms, 2 heads, and I don't know, a podcast? Great. It makes him evil, you see.
Coming next year.
Yes. And I think that's a very valid route to go as well. Exactly. We love the rule of cool. What about you? What do you think makes the right monster for a story?
I think comic books are the medium that's most accepting of the rule of cool.
Oh
Like
yeah.
I think you slap something in a movie or in a novel or something, people are like, no, you need an explanation. In a comic book, like people I think would like an explanation, but they're very willing to just accept
Oh
things.
yeah, I mean, look at Monsters Are My Business. Like, there are some weird fucking guys in there. It's like, they came through the portal. What other
Yeah.
explanation do you want?
Yeah, yeah.
We've read a
No,
lot of
Monsters Are My
monster
Business
books
is
now that I'm
cool.
like
Monsters Are My
rambling a few
Business, you
off.
go in there and you like you just look at all those monsters, and, like you'll get some vibes, man, for like
Oh yeah.
things that can be monsters. You can also hop over to Hack Slash and look at a lot of the slashers. I mean,
Oh
like
yeah.
they've got very monstrous slashers going on there sometimes. So yeah, I don't know. It's picking the right monster. I think is a tough thing. Like it's weird because I think I haven't had a ton of situations where I've come in and I'm like, I want a monster now. I need to pick a monster. Like I think a lot of times I'll like land based on the situation or thing. I'll be like, we're in a castle, you know. I'm gonna go castle. It's like, okay, either it's gonna be like a vampire thing or it's gonna be like some sort of weird witchy type
Mm-hmm.
or like magician's creation gone wrong type vibe. Like I guess that's the thing. Like location matters. Like your
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
location, you want a monster that I mean, sometimes a monster that contrasts with the location can be fun, but I think a lot of times you want a monster that really exemplifies the location.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that's fun.
I think that's
Yeah.
very fun. And I think you hit on something good there with it can be fun. Because not all monster things need to be scary things. Like,
No, absolutely.
Teen Wolf, technically a monster movie. Is it scary? No, he rides a motorcycle on standing up. It's silly, it's goofy. What do you think is the like divergent path? Like, where do you split off when creating or using a monster to go from, oh, this is scary to, oh, this is like, I suppose we could have just scary or not scary, and then from there we could have funny to romance.
Yeah. Romance, don't.
Hey,
Just
you
stop
know
with the
what?
monster romance.
There's
And not in the Monsters of My Business sense. That was very, very entertaining because of the weird subversion of it. But in your Twilight sense, like just stop, please. Um,
Here's the thing. Monster fucking is everywhere. It's an
Fine. You want
oversaturated
the answer?
market.
You want the answer? Twilight gave you the answer. Just make them into hot people that don't actually look like monsters. Like
Here's the thing.
that's
Twilight
the
is
answer.
a bad example of monster fucking. That's bad monster fucking.
But that's the monster fucking that's successful. So if you want a monster fuck with the best of them.
That's not
How
true.
many
If
times
you
have I
want a
said
monster
monster
fuck,
fuck?
look at the self-published shit on Amazon. They're weirdly going crazy.
I think weirdly, I don't think that it's so much of like where you start and then diverge. I think it's where you start apart and then like meet.
Ooh. Speak on that. It sounds profound,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
means nothing so far.
No. Okay, so I don't think you want to start in the same place if you're making a horrifying monster or a I'm not going to say romance monster. I'm throwing that to the side. We're like a fun monster. We're like your protagonist monster, like a monster who lives in the town and is like, chill with people, or like a full monster world of all people who are monsters but not, evil or whatever. So, because I think you're building on different building blocks. Maybe in either version, I do think you can start with an archetype. So maybe it's actually like a diversion and then coming back together.
Ah, a little diamond shape.
Yeah. So I'm gonna contradict myself. It's a diamond shape. If you're starting with an archetype, it's a diamond shape.
Okay.
If you're not starting with an archetype, you can start separately. Because I think if you're starting horrific, you need to start horrific. Like you need to start with what's gonna scare people. You need to start with what's gonna be intimidating. You need to start with, what is going to make this a good antagonistic force. If you're going the opposite route, you're probably going, what's going to make this endearing? What's going to make them kind of, and especially, I'm mainly going to start with an archetype here. It's like, what changes am I making from the base archetype? One is going to be, how do I start making this more, like, okay, longer fangs, or maybe he's going to have two heads. I'm going to make a werewolf with two heads because that's terrifying.
One human
and the other
head,
one is like, yeah. The other one's like, okay, maybe I'll get an artist with a more cutesy art style to draw this. Maybe he'll wear a little suit instead of, being just that. Or Twilight, maybe they're going to be more humanoid than the monster typically is, and with just a few monster characteristics. And then where they meet back up is you have to make sure that they're identifiably monstrous. whether that's making sure that they're still identifiably the archetype, you know, so like, okay, will people still look at this and go werewolf? Will people still look at this and go Frankenstein? Will people still look at this and go vampire? No, in the case of Twilight, but most of the times you want yes.
Weirdly, what I'm going to say is I feel like the reason that Twilight rubs everyone the wrong way is because it does come back, because it gets that identifiable trait of, oh, immortal drinking blood. And that is when it becomes like, oh, you have attempted to come back. You have successfully come back, but what you've done in the middle is so broken that it made the coming back very bad, which I think is a cautionary tale.
Design set. Like, I think that you're right. They come back in like their place in the story, but they fail to come back in any sort of like visual or like signifiable way. Like you look at those vampires, and outside of the little fangs that you don't see half the time when their mouth is closed, like there's nothing identifiably, you know, vampire about them. At least the werewolves still turn into wolves, you know, so like you have that.
Here's the thing, my bigger gripe with Twilight is the werewolves. I hate when werewolves just turn into wolves. I'm like, no, turn into a werewolf. You coward.
I mean, I agree with you. I do agree with you. But in any case, I think, you just need to land in that point where especially if it's an archetype, people will look at it and go, that's what, and if it's not an archetype, well, you need to, this will probably be less of a sense for the horrifying, because I think with the horrifying, if you're not based off of an archetype, you're just going to be good. Like, it's going to be a monster that's horrifying, whatever.
Yeah.
But if you're talking monster and you're leaning the non-horrified way, you want to make sure that they still land in the monster column in the middle, if we're talking our diamond here. They still land in the monster column instead of just like anthropomorphic creature that isn't a monster. So you're between like the Ninja Turtles, who aren't still monsters, and like, what's a good like monster, like anything that has like Bigfoot as the protagonist, or anything that has like a werewolf as a protagonist, you know, like I can't think of anything right now. It's a good example, and that's
Bigfoot Knows Karate.
Bigfoot Knows Karate, perfect. It's the difference between Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Bigfoot Knows Karate. Like, yes, both are, you know, anthropomorphic martial art characters, but one comes back around a monster by being very identifiably Bigfoot, and the other one is more unique and on its own. So yeah, they don't really land in the monster category. So yeah, that's my personal, and like the thing is, you know, I'll use an example from Ninja Turtles just as like a way to point out how like it doesn't have to be an archetype. The turtles themselves don't really come across as monsters. They come across as, you know, your protagonist turtle characters. Meanwhile, Turn a Leatherhead, the, you know, alligator, I don't know if he's an alligator or a crocodile, you know, character in there, he does come across as a monster, despite the fact that he's not any recognizable archetype, because they just make him more monstrous. I'm sure you can make turtles pretty freaking, or you can go to Slash. Slash comes across as a monster. He's also a turtle, you know, but they just draw him in a way where he's darker, he's got spikes, he's got big, like, his mouth looks like you could chomp your head off. I think he comes off of a snapping turtle, and they use that as the base. So
that's so fun.
Like... So the point is, like, that coming back is really important. You know, like, I think there is a point in which you make something that is just, like, animalistic or just, you know, weird, but not monster. You want to be identifiably monster, even if you're not trying to be scary.
And I think that's really important, too, to have that diamond shape, because if you're just doing a straight line of werewolf to werewolf, it's not going to be like a particularly original or exciting story. Like, there can be very much like exciting werewolf to werewolf stories, but they've mostly kind of been done, and it'll just be like, okay, but like, what's your werewolf? So you really want that point out to the side where you can do, I have made this cool thing happen with a werewolf, and then you come back up to werewolf. And that spot is the tricky spot, because that's the part that is going to be subject to more so judgment.
I mean, that was. I mean, if you want to build it from, we can build the triangle with, or the diamond with Julius, right?
Yeah, go for it.
You start at werewolf. How do we make this unique? How do we not just do werewolf? Okay, well, it's gonna be hell. It's gonna be a hellhound instead of a werewolf. He's gonna be more red, more brown. The face is gonna be a little bit more humanoid instead of being like, you know, a big, scary wolf mouth. And then you come back. Still gotta look like a werewolf. Still gonna have those claws. Still gonna have that fur. Still gonna have that transformation. Still gonna have that
tactical
fully
tough.
Control that side of him. Like, boom, there's your diamond. Yeah, I think I have explained the diamond after I said it, so it's not just me trying to sound fancy. Yes. And I'm gonna take that to the.
You've gone done did it. It sounded profound, and you made it profound. and
Yeah,
I'm
thank
proud
you.
of you for that. But a lot of monsters inevitably are horror creatures. Like, they are meant to
Oh,
be scary. The role of them
else.
in the story is to be this antagonistic force that is weird to deal with in
Yeah.
whatever way that happens. We briefly, I think in the episode where we talked about setting tone, we briefly talked about horror in comics and how you can
Tough.
achieve all of those horror beats. Uh, with a monster, you have some kind of classic things to pull from, like, oh, don't show your monster too soon, because once they can see it, it's like too late. You've got your big reveal, and now it's less scary because you see what it is, which I think is a pretty ringing true rule in general. There's a reason that so many people touch on it. Do you have any other strats in mind for how you can specifically with monsters? You mentioned like making their fangs longer and stuff. I think that that's a really good
Yeah. I
pull
mean,
of like
visual is going to be a
exaggerating
big thing
features.
because horror is notoriously hard to do in comics. Like horror
Mm-hmm.
comics, yes, have been a big thing for a long time in comics, but to actually scare somebody out of a comic book is very difficult, if not impossible. So I think for comics, you want to lean more into the unsettling, the weird, the strange, rather than like jump scares. Like you're not going to jump scare somebody in your comic book. So you gotta instead lean into like this thing looks real freaking weird in a way that only a fantastic comic book artist can come in and make something look really freaking weird. You can do that, eyeball in the butthole, moment. So yeah, I think a lot of it's going to be visual. A lot of it's going to be letting your artist do something really cool and unique, that's going to unsettle people, or at least let people go instantly like that is an intimidating monster. And the other thing is just like making your you have to make them scared for the character if you can't make them scared for themselves. Like you might
Mm-hmm.
not jump scare them, but if you can have them not necessarily scared but concerned throughout the entire comic that a character they care about is going to be killed by said monster, you've still got them. I mean, that's the entirety of the Walking Dead comic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, yes, you might not be scared of the zombies in the Walking Dead comic, but you are constantly scared that somebody's going to get got that you care about. Um, so yeah, I guess building up stakes really, like showing that these monsters are dangerous and are
Mm-hmm.
something to be scared of. If you're going the horror route, obviously. Do you
Yeah, and
have
I
do you have any
think
more on that?
yeah, I think with comics there's an instinct to lean into like heavy gore with monsters and with horror, and I think that makes a lot of sense because that's one of the very visceral ways that you can do comics in a way that like you can't do with written horror. Like you can
Yeah,
describe a writhing pile of intestines, but it's much scarier when that writhing pile of intestines is right in front of you. I don't know that that's necessary, but like you said, it's about establishing what this monster is like capable of, why the people in the story are afraid of the monster. So leaning into things like brutality, leaning into things like kind of
brutality.
yeah, kind of like taboo things like killing children is a pretty great way to make your monster horrifying. Uh, Things like that, and then leaning into atmosphere, I feel like is so
Oh yeah.
huge. You need to make sure that I I don't think you can pull off a monster book if you have like a kind of I'm not afraid of this monster type of character, because it's hard to like in a movie you can very much have that character and then have that character like get their head bit off or something, and you
That's
get
exactly where my thought was as you said that. I'm like, they have their head bit off immediately, and then the rest of the characters are scared.
yeah. I think the problem though is in comics that I feel like has a bit more of a like funny angle to it,
Yeah. No,
in a way
that's
that I think
that's
that
very
any
fair.
like written or I guess read medium
Yeah.
does, as opposed to
Yeah,
something like a
absolutely.
movie where you can like make that horrifying.
Yeah.
Because even if like they die very grimly, it's like okay, that was still pretty funny though.
Yeah.
And we
No,
we
I think
briefly
you hit
talked.
something.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
You hit something really big there, which the comics. There's whenever you jump from, or you're talking about different mediums, like they all have their pros and cons and what
Mm-hmm.
they're like good at conveying to people consuming them. And comics, you don't get the like the full sense senses that you get in TV or movies, where you can give them sound and moving picture and all of this in a way that you can really jump scare them something. But something that comics can do so phenomenally through having these beautiful illustrated pages that people are on there for, and having captions and all that stuff that can come throughout, is they can convey tone really, really well. Like, you can be 2 pages into a comic and just get such a tone. Like, we say all the time, like, this comic just has a really good vibe. Like, and that's not just us like trying to say something when there's something like, that's just something that certain comics can hit you with. And for a horror or a monster book, I think that's incredibly important to land on.
Absolutely agreed. But I think that's going to be all that we have today for talking about monsters. We'll see for the rest of the creator corners for October. I don't know if we've got any interviews scheduled coming up. I don't think we do.
We might end up with one by the end of October. We do have an interview that we're kind of circling around right now.
Exactly. But we'll see if we can fit in some more spooky writing, specific ones to the reason for the season and all that. But that is going to take us to an end of our episode for today. Next week we've got some wonderful polls coming. Jay Bird, what do we have?
Yeah. So for next week, we are going to be talking about Minor Arcana number 2, Absolute Batman number 1.
Also so stoked. Here.
But as we've gotten stoked about Batman, we are not content at 1 Batman title for this coming week with all the Batman excitement. We need 2. We're also going to be picking up Batman and Robin number 14. It's the start of a new arc, so we figure, why not jump on there?
And then, big thing for DC All In. It's supposed to be a place where people can jump in. So it'll also be a good chance for us to kind of look at that and be like, but is it though?
Yeah. At least they're not going to bring everything like, Dawn of DC again. They're sticking with the numbers here. And then finally, we're going to be meeting Murder Kingdom number 1. So, yeah, very exciting. Yeah. Okay, you want to tell the people where else they can find us?
Yeah, so this past weekend, in anticipation for Absolute Batman, we dropped the first video in our Absolute Universe Fantasy Draft. For the entirety of DC's Absolute Universe, Jay and I are doing a fantasy football-inspired draft and competition. I am the head of Team Wonder Woman, and Jay, you are the head of Team
Batman. So this book is good for me right here. Are you playing Batman villain? You are playing a Batman villain though, so you will.
Yes, I've got Black Mask as my villain pick. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, we also have a bot on the board who is Team Superman. We are super excited to get started reading these Absolute books and start checking out these points. But we go through all of the rules and everything down in that video, the Absolute Universe Fantasy Draft. I'm sure that it'll be linked for your clicking. And if you do your own draft, please do and let us know. It'll be fun to do it with a whole group.
Yeah. I think our goal is to rope more people into this
as we get more books coming out. But we also are looking forward to things.
We're looking forward.
That's right. This Saturday is the second Saturday of October, which means the Strange Saturday Super Show. Jay, this month is your pick.
Yes, we're going quite odd. Shout out to Reddit. I found this in a Reddit thread about weird comic books. So I'm going to read the description that the person gave that made this the book that I decided to pick. A guy in a scuba suit and his cigar-smoking talking tuna sidekick discover secrets about soft drinks, Egyptian gods, and the moon. So I felt that was perfect. And so we are going to be reading Sea Guy by Grant Morrison and Cameron Stewart.
Grant Morrison, you freaky bitch.
He has previously written Happy, which is a previous Strange Saturday Super Show installment. So check that out. But yeah, this is weird, I think, and it feels perfect for the Strange Saturday Super Show.
Well, hell yeah. As always, feel free to drop a like and subscribe and follow us on all of our other socials. We will hit you up next week.
See you then, Comic Geeks.